So today we have an interesting knife with an interesting story behind it. This is the CRKT Offbeat. Okay, and as you can see, this has a unique locking mechanism. All right, ambidextrous thumb studs, and we open that. You can see the back part of the frame drops down into that little notch. All right, that is our lock. All right, pretty cool. A little bit different. This is designed by Crawford. Now this knife came out, I believe, earlier this year. I think it was January 2018. Could be mistaken on that, but I think it's about a year old by now. But this design is a lot older than that, and there's an interesting story behind it, which we'll get to in just a moment. But first I want to get some specs out of the way. Our blade here is 3.5 inches. It's an 8CR13 MOV, which is not a surprise since it's CRKT. This knife is made in China. Manufactured in China, all right, to be more of an affordable option. Price on this about $27, pretty consistent. I'll say between 25 and 30, but you'll see in most places, most dealer sites have them for like 27, 28, something like that, which is reasonable for what you're getting. The close length on this is 4.6 inches, all right, and the overall length is 8 inches, all right, just a hair over 8. Also, the weight on this is 3 ounces. You can see it's an all stainless steel knife. Now, this might appear to be one solid piece. I believe the original design was a solid piece. However, this is a 3-piece. All right, so we have 2 handle scales, and then this lock is also the spacer. All right, now they did an awesome job finishing this and polishing it, but if I zoom in and we get the glare just right, you can see it right there. You can see 1, 2, and 3 circles. Those circles are just where there were steel pins. They went through all 3 pieces. All right, so like I said, they're very hidden. Sometimes some old Benchmade Balisongs, they had some models with hidden pins, which again, they're called hidden pins because they're pinned in and then the surface is finished so that you're not supposed to really see them. And normally you don't see them unless you're really looking for them. All right, so having a closer look here, you can see that it is a 3-piece. If I hit the light just right, I mean, from the naked eye, normally it looked like one solid piece of metal, but you can kind of see that just a hair of a gap on this side. But anyway, just makes the cost a lot cheaper. All right, to make this one solid piece of metal would be a heck of a lot more expensive. But I think they did a really good job of giving that illusion, which I believe the original design was 1 piece. But anyway, 3 ounces on this, so it is very lightweight. Being an all-metal knife, it's not as comfortable as far as grip goes. There is a little bit of a finger troll here, but generally speaking, it's kind of just slick. You know what I mean? I never have a problem with knives like falling out of my hands or anything. But as I mentioned in previous videos, when you have an all stainless knife, if you live in colder climates, you're not using gloves and you're standing outside for a period of time, it does actually get very cold. It retains that cold. It also retains the heat. So if you put this knife down during a project in the middle of summer with the sun beating on it, it gets hot. And you go touch it and it's hot. All right, so it's just a natural downside to having a stainless steel knife, at least the scales being stainless. What is interesting though is not only the locking mechanism is interesting, but it flares up on the end here. All right, so you have a little bit of a thumb rest. Okay, so your thumb naturally wants to sit there. You don't really go over it at all. But in holding this by design, you're keeping the knife closed. Okay, so let's talk about this locking mechanism a little bit more. You can see there's a notch cut out in the back of the blade. All right, pretty simple stuff here. As you're, let's see, start from closed. When it's closed, the design of the back of the blade keeps it from opening. It's not going to accidentally open. All right. This piece, because this is standing, acts like a spring, right? Or spring steel rather, so it can be bent, but it wants to always go back to that original position. So as we open this, you can see it wants to shut. Okay, so that acts kind of like a detent, even though there isn't one. So the knife will be shut. It's not going to open on accident, but as you're opening it, get to a certain point, it's not going to want to shut anymore. And as we rotate all the way around, you can see it clearly just falls into place. And that keeps the blade from closing. But because your grip is here, you're solidifying that lock. Okay, by just gripping it and holding it, you're pushing it into that little notch, further locking it in. All right, there is just a tiny hair of play in here. And you can see this production version, you can see that there's a flat face on the lock, but the actual cutout is like kind of curved a little bit. All right, so it's not a perfect fit. It definitely locks up fine. In using this, you don't feel any kind of wiggle or anything like that. It's only when I'm scrutinizing it, I'm trying to, you know, find some blade play, just a tiny hair of it. But yeah, I mean, it's a pretty interesting design. But as I mentioned earlier in the video, even though this knife is not that old, the design is. All right, so let's put this down for a second, get the camera to focus again by doing that. Okay, actually, let's leave it in the open position so you can see that. So let's talk about the history of this knife, because boy, is it full of history and a knife story, something that happens in the knife industry quite often, more often than you might think. But the original design on this knife, it might look familiar to some of the old timers because A.G. Russell has been selling this knife design for decades, literally decades. I saw this knife back when I was like, I don't know, 12, 13 years old, and I really wanted one. It was called the A.G. Russell one hand knife. That's it. One-handed knife, or one-hand knife, I think. And that's because back when it was released in 1988, there wasn't a whole lot of one-hand opening knives. All right, we had a lot of like, you know, buck, lockback style knives. So it's kind of innovative and something new. You can open and close this with one hand. All right, the locking mechanism itself has a stud that goes through it. You can, you know, hold the knife in your hand like this, use your thumb to push that lock out, and then close it with one hand, which was, again, very innovative at the time when this was released. All right, so one-handed knife. Of course, it is a little bit more comfortable, you know, using two hands by pinching with both fingers to release that lock, but it is one hand opening and closing capable, which is pretty cool. And you can see there's a lot of knurling on that piece there. So again, once you're using it with one hand, it's hard to kind of slip off of that. It grips your thumb quite well. All right. But yeah, going back to the history, this is a Pat Crawford design, and the first knife like this was a custom knife from Pat Crawford. A.G. Russell, back in 1987 or so, went to a knife show, picked up one of Pat Crawford's knives that looked just like this, said, wow, that's really cool. And he asked him, do you have a patent on this design? And at the time, Pat Crawford said, no, you can't patent this. So A.G. Russell went, okay, whatever. And guess what? Not too long after that, he tweaked the design just a teeny bit, and he patented it himself. So, and he openly admits this, by the way. This is not like some kind of knife rumor. He openly admits that he was inspired by this design and pretty much copied it and patented it himself and sold it for 20 plus years. I mean, there was a ton of these versions. Some of these had scales, overscales, like I know I've seen one in stag where it, you know, from like this point back was all like a stag, you know, but it was built onto the knife, which I'm sure gave it even more girth and grip and comfort and everything, but it had the same locking mechanism. And of course, the ones from A.G. Russell for many, many years were made in Italy. I forget, I think it was Edgeco is the company that was actually producing them in Italy for A.G. Russell, but they were offered for like $150 or something for like a bare bones one, and they had much better steels, okay? So it was basically a higher end version of this knife. I know back in 2008, A.G. Russell did a re-release of this knife because it was so popular. So this knife has been around for literally decades, but it's cool to see a affordable CRKT version come out, you know, earlier this year. All right, so if you're interested in this design, you can have this one for, like I said, about $27 or so. You can get the A.G. Russell one, one of the many versions of it for, like I said, about $150 or so, with a much, you know, better upgraded steel. I'm not sure offhand if the A.G. Russell versions are a three-piece or if it is one piece of milled stainless. I don't really know. I'm sure some of you guys watching have the A.G. Russell version. It's a very classy gentleman style knife. You know, so the people who own those, if you can check it out and let me know down in the comments, that'd be pretty cool. I appreciate the feedback there. But yeah, I mean, it's a good performing knife. Like I said, long, slender blade, hollow ground. This one in the 8 CR13 MOV. It performs okay. I did carry this. I did use this. The reason I wanted this one specifically was for my weird, you know, locking mechanism knife collection, or weird folders, I should say. And it has a really cool story. but it's just another reminder that designs are continuously copied, modified, and basically recycled in the knife community. A lot of times when you see something that's like brand new, it's been around. There's literally thousands of people that saw this knife, or people who won't see this video or won't read some of the old threads on the forums, and they'll go, wow, that's such a cool new design. But it's not new. It's a recycled design that's been around since 1987. By the way, real quick, the pocket clip, because I didn't mention it yet, nice big sturdy pocket clip from CRKT. Absolutely love it. Carries very nicely in the pocket. There is a huge lanyard hole. I did not use this one, but if you wanted to throw a lanyard on there, you can see how it's going to carry in the pocket. Obviously, it's sitting against flat stainless, all right, so there's no issues with it, slipping, or excuse me, grabbing too much onto the pocket material. Also very jean friendly. There's a lot of different folders that are just, they're harder to use with denim jeans because you have such a thick material at the edge of the pocket to go over that seam. As you can see, I mean, it's a tight clip, but it does bend up enough for, thicker pockets. But yeah, pretty interesting. The CRKT Offbeat. All right, like I said, CRKT is, let me put that, there we go, you can see it, Crawford Design. So my assumption is they worked with Pat Crawford to get this blade back out there. So I like weird knives, as you guys know, and this one is a classy weird knife. So again, down in the comment section, let me know what you know about this story, especially if you're older and you were around the knife industry when this stuff was going on. That'd be cool to hear from you. As well as if you have the A.G. Russell version, or even better, if you have an original Pat Crawford. Is it one solid piece, like I've heard, because I've never handled one or seen one in person, or is it a three-piece? I don't really know. The idea behind the original design was to not have to add liners or an additional locking mechanism. It was to mill out one solid piece of stainless steel, throw in a pin through the locking portion of it, throw in a pin, through the blade, and you're done, basically, obviously, with the hardware. But yeah, that's pretty much it. CRKT Offbeat, rich in history, even though it's a pretty new knife to the scene. So that's all. Thanks for watching. Hope you guys have a wonderful day, and I'll see you tomorrow with another video. Take care, guys.